The season continues to just absolutely fly by. Can you believe it? There are only 2 football games left in the regular season for Mike Elko and the Duke Blue Devils, starting today with the game against Virginia. Let's talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's glad to have you here with us on another football Saturday. Just 2 games left in the regular season for this Duke football team. They take on Virginia today in Charlottesville, and the next weekend they're at home to round out the regular season with the contest against Pittsburgh. If you have not done so already, let me tell you a little bit about Locked On Blue Devils, a daily podcast devoted to everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. And with that, if you haven't already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Watch our show on YouTube each and every day. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're everywhere, and we're talking about everything going on with Duke athletics. A lot of men's basketball conversations and football as well. We've got a heavy dose of football coming your way today with our good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. We start with the bad. We've got to talk about last week's game against North Carolina, and then we'll set up today's game against Virginia for Duke football as well. But first and foremost, Josh, thanks again for joining us on yet another Saturday game day.
Yeah, man, we're officially in crossover season, right in the middle of it. Duke basketball, Duke football, and Duke football's got a big game today in Charlottesville, obviously trying to improve on the bowl selection, and these last 2 weeks, you know, the difference between a 6-6 and an 8-4 team is pretty drastic when it comes to bowl selections, and so Duke is definitely playing for a better, what we like to say, I mean, even like a warm weather bowl, which would be really cool for Duke fans, I'm sure. So yeah, 2 big games coming up, but yeah, unfortunately, dropped a heartbreaker in double overtime in Chapel Hill Saturday.
Double overtime in Chapel Hill against your rival, the North Carolina Tar Heels. Duke falls 47-45. A really unbelievable game that had a little bit of everything. And what else would you expect from a rivalry like this one? There are so many just notable games that have happened in the basketball edition of this rivalry, but it's known for also putting out other amazing contests across several different sports. And this past Saturday was no exception. I mean, from turnovers, long touchdown plays, games going all the way to overtime, some big coaching decisions on the sidelines, great plays out of the quarterback spot. I mean, you had to be pleased with a little bit of everything. If you're just a football observer, watching a game like that this past weekend was certainly a treat.
Oh, certainly. I mean, and to think that Duke's quarterback, you know, Grayson Loftis is a true freshman, who did not expect to play this season. I mean, the plan at the beginning of the season was for him to redshirt because having Riley Leonard and Henry Beelan both ahead of him on the depth chart, and here Grayson Loftis is in the middle of the rivalry. And I think if you would have asked any logical Duke fan before the game and say UNC scores 47 points, is this game close? I think every single Duke fan would have been like, nah, there's no way we're putting up 40 plus. And so congratulations to him. Congratulations to Kevin Johns and the offense. I thought the offense was potent after coming out a little slow in the first quarter. The offense got their rhythm. Jordan Waters, can't talk about this without mentioning him. 2 more touchdown runs. I believe that he's up to 12, if I'm not mistaken, for the season. I believe he's 2 away from tying the all-time record, 3 away from breaking the all-time record for touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. There was just a lot that happened in that game. And then, I mean, listen, you can't talk about this Duke Carolina game, really the last 2 seasons, without mentioning just the way the officiating just seemed to play out. I mean, Coach Elko's been about as vocal about it as he can appropriately be. But I mean, they were just unfortunate. And I'll just say, I'm trying to be logical about it, JJ. I was there. I was on the sidelines on the Duke side. And I think my problem with what happened Saturday night is not the way the calls went per se. My problem is the lack of review. And so, like earlier in the game, UNC, I forget, it wasn't a Tess Walker, but one of their receivers made a catch. You could clearly see his feet in. Like, in fact, he like double tapped his feet in. They were in like 4 times. And they stopped it and reviewed it. And took like 3 minutes to review whether his feet were in. So everybody in the stadium saw his feet were in. And then like you have the interception, the ball that gets thrown that Chandler Rivers knocks loose. Josh Pickett winds up with it on the bottom of that pile. And somehow we don't review that, and I guess at the end of the day, it's not really, I'm not going to complain, honestly, about a call made in the moment, unless it's just egregious. What I will complain about is the lack of consistency or some sort of like flow to how we're going to do replay. And if we have replay there and we have it available, why in the world would it not get used with 2 minutes and 41 seconds left in the game on a crucial play?
And there's a lot of still plays to get to, a lot of controversy towards the finish in double overtime that we haven't even touched on. A lot of exciting plays before that and more. Again, a fun game, 47-45, the final score. North Carolina improves to 8-2 on the season. Our beloved Duke Blue Devils now 6-4, 3-3 in the league. Let's keep talking a little bit about it after our first time out here on today's episode of the program. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. Prize Picks, with basketball season being here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from a specials league. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce had a 10.5 combo of 3-point shots made plus receptions. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football or basketball games, if a player who exits the game in the first half does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and go ahead and use code Locked On College for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, we got to get to the finish for this Duke game in particular, what we saw out of the end of regulation and then in overtime. But before we do that, we've talked a little bit about the resiliency of this Duke football team. You think about the effort all the way to the end in a game like Notre Dame earlier this season. Duke's down to their third-string quarterback in Grayson Loftis, as you said. And at one point, Josh, at 2 different points, I should say, this Duke team fell behind by double digits. They're down 13-0 in the first half. North Carolina had a 26-14 lead in the second half. And crazy enough, Duke kept coming back.
Yeah, it was really incredible, to be honest with you. I mean, I tweeted this from our account in the first quarter, and I meant it. I was not trying to be sarcastic. Early on in the first quarter, you kind of felt like this was a must. Like, Duke had to stop UNC. Like, I feel like if UNC goes up 2 touchdowns starting right off, I don't know how that goes, right? And then, I mean, God forbid they go up 21-0, and that would have been, that 13-0 was a touchdown and 2 field goals. So the Duke defense, did do a bend don't break there for those 2 possessions and kept Duke within striking distance, right? And then I felt like all Grayson Loftis needed, was a little bit of time. Obviously, this is the biggest game that he's ever played in. and he just needed some time. Now, the unfortunately, at the end of the game, we also couldn't get stops when we needed them most from the defense. And look, JJ, I'll ask you this question, man. And you weren't at the game in person, but I mean, name a better college quarterback than Drake May, man. If I'm an NFL scout right now, he's my number one pick. Like, I don't care. You can talk Caleb Williams all you want to. Give me Drake May. Drake May has shown
I'm a big fan.
no
He gets the
chinks in
job
that
done.
armor.
Yeah.
No chinks in that armor, man. Like, I know you're down there in SEC country a lot, and you get to see some very talented guys as well. But good gracious, man, he's legit, man. And I got to give credit where credit's due as a Duke fan. As much as I despise the baby blue, man, I got to give him credit.
And there are some tough plays from time to time for Drake May, and yet the guy just finds a way to still stay in it, come back, and make the big ones when they matter most at the end. But to your point, Duke starts to come up with a couple of stops, holding North Carolina to field goals. They finally find the end zone, and Jordan Moore scores, and then North Carolina trots out on offense for all of one single play, and it results in a Jalen Stinson interception, and again, creating another big play for Loftis to go and run it in, and next thing you know, we're going into halftime, and it's 16-14. What was the feeling in Chapel Hill there at halftime?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of shock, to be honest with you, that Duke got back in it that quickly. I think
it's like a one-play interception just turns momentum that. I mean, wow, we're back in.
And it did show you, JJ, great point, like the value of getting pressure, even on the best quarterback in the country. If you get pressure on him and he's got to get rid of the ball quicker, good things happen. And so, Stinson with the interception. And then it was funny because all throughout the first quarter, there have been a lot of the handoff, the RPOs and things like that. And we're like, man, if Grayson will keep one, like they are really, really closing in on the running back. And sure enough, they're in the red zone inside the 10. Grayson does keep one and walks in. I mean, there's no one anywhere close to being around him. And so, Duke goes into halftime down 2. And honestly, that was just because Carolina drove the ball down and got kind of a field goal there at the end of the half, or else Duke would have gone in with a lead. Duke fans, I feel like at that point, you're like, okay, we're back in this game. This is going to be one of those, back and forth. And then, getting into the second half, if you're ready to talk about that. All right, cool. We saw we saw some stuff out of Mike Elko we had not seen in the first 2 seasons. We saw him fake a punt, which I won't give any names, but when Duke travels to away games, only certain number of players can be on the sideline.
Yeah.
Right. You're home, you have all your players. Well, a couple of the players were up in the stands with us. And right after that fake punt, guy turns around and goes, been practicing it all week. When they saw how UNC was lined up, they called it. And what was funny, though, is UNC did not do what Duke thought they were going to do, which is why it almost didn't work. I mean, Terry Moore had to break a tackle in order to get there, but it almost didn't work. And then the same thing on the onside kick. Duke had seen something in UNC, and the guy told me, they kept telling us this week that like they are the worst special teams team in the conference. And so Duke saw that opportunity there. And I mean, it is kind of funny. It was kind of like the old Cutcliffe days. You remember, JJ, like randomly David Cutcliffe would like onside kick it, like sometimes like coming out of the second half, like the opening kickoff for second half, he would like randomly do an onside kick. Like, so I think it was kind of cool to see, Coach Elko. Duke also tried a trick play earlier in the game with Jordan Moore trying to throw the ball out of the backfield or something like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It was a rivalry game, and you saw the coaching staff kind of pull out all the stops and have some fun calling some trick plays. But then the second half goes as everybody saw.
Well, you look at the third quarter, and if you just look at the line score of this football game, there were only 3 points scored in the third quarter. It was a North Carolina field goal. And then all of a sudden in that fourth quarter, 5 touchdowns were scored. The 2 teams combined for 39 points and some just really quick touchdown drives. And that was when we really saw Grayson Loftis make some plays, make some throws that were eyebrow raising. Like, man, this kid, he's got something there, and it was pretty special to see.
Yeah, I tell you what he's got. He's got an arm, man. He's got an arm. I mean, at the end of the day, my man puts the ball where it needs to go. Like, really what you're waiting on with him is you're waiting for the game to slow down. And I don't know, inside of a game, it seems like that happens. The closer he gets to the fourth quarter, the slower the game is. But you'd like to see it overall. You'd like to see him come into a game with the game being slow. And that's obviously going to come with time and experience. And so these are valuable games for Grayson Loftis, no matter what happens the rest of his career, no matter what happens, next year with the depth chart, anything like that, he will always be able to look back at, at this whole stretch of games and be like, hey, I got some valuable exposure to big game climates. And man, his connection with Jordan Moore was spot on. I still can't believe that double move on fourth down. I mean, like, that was just beautiful. Looking back on it, you kind of wish that Duke would have had a little bit more clock awareness and like Jordan would have taken a hard left and like run parallel to the goal line for 5 or 6 seconds to take off, more time of the clock. But you don't think about that stuff in the heat of the moment. So, but yeah, shout out to Grayson, man. Shout out to him. Shout out to, Jordan Moore and Jordan Waters. Those three were the big three.
Well, you take a look at this game, and if you are a Locked On Blue Devils loyalist, if you're one of those everydayers out there, really do appreciate you being a part of our community. You probably recall some really good conversations that Josh and I have had over the years in regards to officiating. There's still conversations to be had about what took place in Charlottesville, where Duke is heading this weekend with Kyle Filipowski in last season's game. But let's get to it, Josh. The final kind of scoring play there for North Carolina, a 2-point conversion. Duke ultimately does not convert theirs when you've got to go for 2 in double overtime. What'd you see? What'd you think of the how everything transpired?
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously talking about the illegal man downfield and the potential of that penalty there. In the heat of the moment, the officials have to throw flags. They have to not throw flags, depending on what they see in the heat of the moment. This is the only thing I will tell you, JJ. It's pretty clear that as soon as the pass was caught, the official turns and looks around. And number 53 for Carolina, the offensive lineman that was clearly 2.5 to 3 yards into the end zone, which, by the way, that would mean he was 5.5 to 6 yards off the ball.
Right.
At that time. He literally like ducks his head behind the Duke defensive lineman like he couldn't be seen, which I think was hilarious.
Sucks. You're right. It's pretty funny.
It's funny. Yeah. But like at the end of the day, he knew that either like I know I am way past the line, or like I know I'm at least borderline because I'm trying to hide from this official, like, ha. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, when you go back and you look at it frame by frame and you slow it down, I mean, he was right at the goal line, stepping into the end zone, when Drake May still had the ball. So, yes, it should have been a penalty. I will say that. Do I fault the officials for missing it in that big of a moment? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, the more egregious thing to me is the lack of a review. It's the lack of a review. And I don't know in that moment. I don't understand. I know we had a challenge flag. I don't know why that challenge flag didn't come out. Whatever. But they didn't use a challenge flag earlier on the out of bounds call. So at the end of the day, that's my problem with it, JJ. It's more the way it operates, not really the end game call. But you're right. The 2-point conversion that goes UNC's way was looks like Drake May's going to run the football. His lineman turned to go block. He winds up throwing the ball. 9 times out of 10, when a play like that happens, there's a flag thrown for illegal man downfield.
All right, one more timeout, and then we'll have a pretty brief rundown of what to expect today. Duke football back in action. They're taking on the Virginia Cavaliers in Charlottesville, and we'll talk about it here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Brewing. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, that are full of flavor and well-crafted, just like your full-strength beer. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. Brewing over 50 styles of craft, non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. fit for all times, so you can drink them anytime, anywhere, and make any activity even more enjoyable. Another great part of Athletic Brewing, there are no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic Brewing's non-alcoholic beers at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get 15% off your first online order. That is code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside Josh Cox. I'm JJ Jackson. You've mentioned kind of the social media a little bit ago at Duke FB Talk. There's a podcast people can watch each week. There's a YouTube channel we want them to go and subscribe to. Tell us a little bit about the content. It's early on game day. If people want to listen to a little bit more before this thing gets kicked off at 3 o'clock Eastern this afternoon, what did you guys talk about a little bit earlier in the week on the show?
Yeah, so if you'll check it out anywhere you listen to podcasts, really just search for Section 17 podcast. You'll see it there. I missed this episode this week as far as being on it. We had Jordan Mann, who's a friend of not only a friend of our show, but a friend of your show here on Locked On. I believe he's your Monday.
Yes.
He's your Monday guy. And yeah, Jordan's a great friend. He was on there in my place, and we took our mailbag. We called it like the Santa load this week, man. There were a lot of questions, grievances, frustrations that we allowed people to vent. And so if you enjoy kind of the fan perspective of Duke football, we try to do that in a professional manner. And yeah, we cover the team. We're able to be close and get some, content and maybe information that you wouldn't normally get. And so, yeah, anywhere you listen, subscribe as obviously here on Locked On. I appreciate JJ having me on.
There was another coaching change in the conference last season, and Virginia was that school. Virginia ultimately hires Tony Elliott, who's the former Clemson offensive coordinator, who had been tied to the Duke job a little bit in the process as well. Duke's very thrilled at how well this Mike Elko thing has played out. It's been a little bit tougher for Tony Elliott and the Virginia Cavaliers. Josh, they are 2-8 so far this season. Duke in this one on Saturday should be favored to win. The Football Power Index from ESPN gives the Blue Devils an 80% chance of getting this one done. Our friends over at FanDuel, however, only give Duke about a 4-point advantage when you're looking at those spreads out there in Las Vegas. What do you think of this matchup?
I mean, I think that if you looked at this matchup in the first 5 weeks of the season, you were like, oh, this is an automatic win. Like, Duke's going to be able to kind of coast in there with everything that's happened, not only to the Duke side of the football, but UVA. I mean, UVA went into Chapel Hill a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and beat UNC. They have had, speaking of, quarterback issues that Duke's had. I mean, Anthony Calandria came in this season just like Grayson Loftis, expecting to redshirt. You had Tony Muskett. You had a depth chart in front of him. And that's all kind of gone by the wayside. And Virginia has really given the reins to a true freshman quarterback who, quite frankly, has been very impressive. They played Louisville last week on the Thursday night game and went down to the wire. I mean, they honestly should have won that game. Louisville ended up coming back because Louisville is that team. But they gave Louisville all they wanted. And so they've had a couple of extra days of prep because they played the Thursday night game last week, and they'll be ready for Duke. And so they've got a high-powered passing offense. I mean, Calandria is good even as a true freshman, and then Malik Washington's got basically 1,200 yards receiving. Malachi Fields at 650. I mean, that's pretty impressive, man. These guys. They get the ball down the field. Calandria keeps he is shifty enough, to keep a play alive. And then, they got a high-powered little offense going, and I did not see that coming. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. So you look at their record, 2-8 on the season, just one win in the ACC. Funny enough, it was against North Carolina in Chapel Hill, mind you, that Virginia was able to win that ball game, 31-27. Every other loss in the ACC for Virginia outside of the Georgia Tech game was by a one-possession score. They lost to NC State by 3, Boston College by 3, Miami by 3 in overtime, a touchdown, 7 points against Louisville, and then Georgia Tech did beat them handedly 45-17 when you just look at those final scores. They've lost so many of those conference games by 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, and Louisville being one of them. I mean, Miami overtime. I'm not saying Miami's a great team by any stretch, but I mean, these are teams that should have and probably thought we're going to go in and, this is going to be an easy game for us. And so, I mean, I don't like giving Tony Elliott credit, but I mean, somehow he's lit a fire under that team, even though their record is terrible. Those guys are going out and playing hard. And, now the thing is, you're playing for spoiling other teams, rankings, and individually these guys are, they're playing for like NIL status. They're playing for potential transfer status. Maybe, there's a lot of personal things that are playing into this now. And so there's a lot left to play for individually for these guys. And so if any Duke fan thinks that Duke's going to waltz into Charlottesville Saturday, coast in there, coast out, and leave with a victory, they're sadly mistaken. This team's going to fight them to the end, and Duke could very well lose this game if they don't come in ready to go.
Going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see this game play out again, 3 p.m. Eastern time on the CW. Interesting football channel for us to be kind of watching.
Yeah, it comes on right after Dawson's Creek ends. So,
there you go.
Be cool.
Yeah. Live to Charlottesville, and Mike Elko and the Blue Devils take your screens. I think it will be a more competitive game, Josh. I think Duke ultimately gets the job done. What's it going to take, and can Duke win this football game today?
Yeah, it's going to take some our secondary playing up to their potential. It'd be really nice if Miles Jones, he was dressed out for the UNC game. It'd be really nice if he could play. I think that's why we brought him in. But it's been a while. But he and Al Blades and Chandler Rivers and Josh Pickett, the corners, I mean, they're going to be tested by these guys here at Virginia. And like I said, their receiving core, especially the top two there with Washington and Fields, they're really solid. And then, the Duke defensive line, I feel like, Dwayne Carter and company, they're going to have to get to Calandria, contain him, and not let him get running. He can run the ball very well. And then, like I said, he keeps plays alive. I've seen him multiple times in the games that I've watched. He'll keep a play alive, and then he'll hit Washington, right, on some like Patrick Mahomes type mess where everybody's kind of free for all, backyard footballing it, and he's a good backyard football player. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's, obviously Duke wants to establish the run. I mean, that's been, here we're at the end of the season now. There's no guessing what Duke wants to do. But I'd love to see Grayson Loftis in the first quarter be settled in like Grayson Loftis has been in the fourth quarter. So that would be my big takeaway for this game is you'd like to get Grayson some throws and get him in his rhythm earlier in the game. And so if that happens, Duke comes away with the win. I think Duke, could potentially win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think if that doesn't happen and Virginia gets momentum, I believe we're in for a dogfight. And so we'll see what happens later on today.
That's perfect. Excited to see it unfold. Duke and Virginia a little bit later. Josh, as always, it's great to see you, and we'll talk again soon here, okay?
Sounds good, JJ. Have a good weekend, man.
All right, that's Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast joining us here on the program. Make sure you go check out all the other amazing shows that Locked On has to offer. Locked On Sports Today, we've got a new addition to the program, live 24/7 programming on our YouTube channel there, Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you go and check that out. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.